Hello, friends. On this channel, you will find multiple DevOps and cloud engineer interview from freshers, entry level to architect level positions. Just one request that I see from YouTube analytics that around 50% of the viewers have not subscribed to the channel. I would highly suggest, and if you are looking for a job in DevOps and cloud or related to DevOps and cloud in any way, do subscribe to the channel. Today, we are bringing another mock interview with 2 years experience DevOps and cloud working professional. So let's jump into that. So Prerna, I do have your resume with me. So can we jump on to understanding what sort of experience you bring, what sort of key skill set you have, and then we can get into more technical discussion from there.
Sure. Thank you. So let me initiate by telling that I have completed my graduation from BSc Computer Science from the BPSU. And after 1 year, I started my luck in DevOps and I started as an intern in a startup company, a very early stage startup company. So it was Flexa Technologies. It is Germany-based company. So I was working remotely in it. So for the first 6 months as an intern, I was managing basic Linux servers as it was a small age startup company. They were hosting all their things on EC2 because AWS was a bit costly for them. So, uh, as if I tell you about the AWS services that I explored at that time were like basic services like VPC security group. Mainly, my day-to-day work was like scripting, managing those EC2 servers, and writing small scripts to like take backup of the data and the daily cron job that should run to maintain the backup and all those small things and basic services like Docker container, the uptime of website. Yeah, some of few things. And then after 6 months, I joined as a full-time DevOps engineer in Complino Technologies. That is my current working company. So this company is a AWS partner company. So being AWS partner company, I got full hands-on on like mostly all of the famous AWS services like EKS, ECS, VPC, Security Group, ALB, NLB, CMS, IAM, and etc. All the majorly used AWS services, I would say. And since mine is a client-based company, so with the different client, we have to work on different involvement depending on the project. As mentioned in my resume itself, I have worked on various projects depending on the client's use case. So, mostly I'm involved in CI/CD. Like if there's a CI/CD project, that is my specialization. We utilize AWS code pipeline for CI/CD. We don't use Jenkins, only AWS projects like code commit, code pipeline, and code deploy. Other than that, I have worked on uh, Dockerization projects like Dockerizing of microservices and then making CI/CD out of it. And if the deployment is on EKS or ECS, depends. So that kind of thing. Yeah, lately I've also worked on a disaster recovery project. There we have to build another setup environment for the client utilizing the current one so as to make it a disaster recovery one. So we utilize Terraform in that. Yeah, that is it. Thank you.
Okay, since you mentioned CI/CD is sort of your specialization,
Yeah.
can you, if for a new customer, you have to set up a build, package, deploy, end-to-end pipeline for EKS cluster, how
Okay.
many pipelines you would have and what sort of stages you will do? Like they want to do everything automated. So what stages you will have, what tools, technologies you will add? Can you briefly explain on that?
Sure, sir. So as a DevOps engineer, sir, before designing any solution, be it pipeline or anything, we first go through the architecture of the customer. We want to know their pain points, how are their applications hosted. Say if they are hosted currently on EC2 server or whatever, we see the architecture. If it's barely microservices running on EC2, we suggest them to Dockerize as this is like technology is going there only. So that's how we first analyze the architecture. And as a good practice, we develop a single pipeline for a single microservice so that they all can work independently. And if it is not, since you told me it is already on EKS, so it must be Dockerized, because without Dockerization, you cannot move things on EKS. If it is not, we generally advise that we do it ourselves, we analyze, and then according to the application, like it is CPU intensive or it is memory intensive, we decide the server, like build server and deployment server as well. But first, whatever the source code of the customer is, like Bitbucket or GitHub, whatever it is, we ask them for access. As I told you, our is client-based company, so they give us limited permissions. We create a set of permission for them, like this is the access we'll be needing. Uh, so after that access has been taken, we start with the build part. So if there is already segregation of stages in their repo, that is fine. As we suggest, since we'll not be messing up with your master branch, we'll need a separate branch, say DR, or like if you are testing first, test branch. And with that branch, we establish a connection with the code pipeline. In AWS terminology, we call it a code star pipeline connection. So it requires certain set of permission, as I already told you, that we have been taken, or if client does not want it, we are okay with doing it on the call itself, depending on their security and whatever the practices they follow. So after that connection has been made with a separate branch that we told them to make, so that we can play around the scene as we are testing first. So this is our source part. After that, we jump to the build part. So for the build part, we utilize code build. As I told you, we are very much into AWS itself. We do not utilize other things. So in the code build, you have a term called build spec file, where you specify all your build commands. It's a YAML file. So in basic simple YAML syntax, you can like we used to ask developers how were they building their application before, because since it's not our job, we are just integrating things, and then we sort of integrate those commands in our build spec. And we'll start with the basic things like few pre-install commands, few packages that need to be updated. If there's dependency to the application, we ask all of those things, and we insert those commands in pre-install stages, and or you can say pre-build stage, whatever. And before that, we have option of like spacing environment variables if application is using any environment variables, that we can also give in the build spec itself. But as a security best practice, we don't advise it to give it barely. We utilize parameter store for that. That's another AWS services used as AWS. We can give values there as a key value pair, and we can encrypt them, or we can like we advise to encrypt them, but we can put the values as plain text as well. So there it is. This is how we handle environment part. Then it's pre-install part. Then in the final build stage, we write all the logic to build our application. What are those commands? And then as an artifact, we in the last we mentioned what are the artifacts we will be needing further on to deploy the application, and then we like build it first, and we test it. Whatever the errors we encounter in the log, we go through it, we debug it. If necessary, we'll have talk with the developer, and then we resolve it. Another thing, the build part is completed now. Another thing is, oh, sorry, I missed one thing. These artifacts must be stored in our S3 bucket location that we can make, and we can give a specific folder for this thing in the zip format. So if by any chance we want to see what is being builded, what are the artifacts, what is coming, what is not coming, we can directly go to the S3 bucket. The link has been provided in the build section.
If it is a Docker that image we are building, what would be the output in this case?
Sir, when we are building the Docker image, we don't use to build much. We have just simply commands to log in into ECR, since we are also pushing the image into ECR. So we don't need artifacts there. We instead of that, we give ECR login command to log in and to authenticate. There are two commands for ECR. We do that. We make a ECR repo for the same, and simply we have Docker file in the repo itself as D capital, and we need that Docker build with Docker file command, and we'll not be going on the artifacts part that way. We'll be pushing the image into the ECR. That is it. That is how I told you. If it is Docker, it's being easy for us also to build, and also for the developer or the team to manage when it is deployed. So this is about the build part.
So this is
And
what you are
if
doing, but if the customer says that I want to do some scanning as well, I want to bring in some sort of security tools into the process. So do you have some
okay,
provision for that?
okay, sir. So, sir, we are like if like few of our customers have already told us the same question. So, talking about the scanning tools like SonarCube and all that we are not into. It's like this is totally developer's job in our company. Like we are not supposed to do this. But yeah, after image has been built, so in ECR when you push it, whenever you make a repo, you have an option to scan the image vulnerabilities. That as a best practice we always enable, and we also advise our customers to utilize it. You can see what all are the vulnerabilities in your
Can you
image.
give two examples of any vulnerabilities you found in your images?
Yes, sir. So we don't remediate it, yeah, but we have been we go through it. We tell the customer, yeah, this is how you can do it. So many a times, a common vulnerability that we have been seen is like few packages are outdated and they have been used again and again. And at that time when they will be depreciated, then only customer will know. So that will result in some downtime. So it's good to know it before. So with those scan thing, you can know it what packages. Also, they give you suggestion and links. How can you remediate it? Okay,
Which
and another thing.
tool do you use to scan these images?
Sorry, sir.
Do you use any tool, any process to scan these images?
No, sir. We particularly don't use any tool. We just do this scanning after the build part itself in the ECR.
So is it a feature of AWS that scans it? Who scans the images?
Yeah, sir. It is a feature of AWS itself in the ECR.
Okay. All right. Any other vulnerability you remember that typically comes when scanning the Docker images?
So while we scan the Docker images, there are also some security concerns. If in your Docker file or something you may have few ports that are not utilized or they are not even needed, or they are very critical security ports that they are not need to be open, like 22 SSH ports. It will also notify you the same that this is not needed, so you can remove it.
Okay. How do you open a port on Docker image? Like,
Okay. So while building a Docker image, you will be first initiate by building a Docker file. So in Docker file, you have some sets of information starting from the image, the base image, the working directory. There also we have a parameter called port. There you can give the port that your application is utilizing, and as suggested, you should only give those ports that will be needing that your application will be utilizing in future.
okay, cool. Yeah.
Also, one more thing, sir. It is also best practices, and as you asked me, what are the other vulnerabilities that you have seen? One of the vulnerabilities that I have seen, few people does this mistake that while creating a Docker file, if you don't give any user explicitly in the file, it will be utilizing the root user.
Good.
This is not the best practice.
Yes.
So this is
This
also
is the
don't
most
prefer.
common incident. You
Correct.
scan any of the Docker image, this would be the most common incident that would be reported.
Correct, sir. And other than that, sir, in our source code, if there is anything related to access key, secret access key, or password that is barely given, it is also not recommended, because whatever the source repo is, GitHub or whatever it is, you should never barely use your password or access key. So this is another vulnerability that I have seen, and we have been suggesting not to use it.
I want to understand when you mentioned about SSM parameters being used as environment variables. How do you connect them to Docker image? Like, how do you supply those values?
Okay. Okay. So, sir, SSM parameters that we are using, like we in the build stage give them in the build spec file, as I told you, and there is a IAM role that connects to my code build, which inside which I am writing this build spec file. So that first of all, that IAM role needs permission to all the AWS services, maybe S3 that I am sending my artifacts to, CloudWatch logs, where my logs will go. And same goes for parameter store. I'll be providing it permission to parameter store, but this is how my code build connects to parameter. Now, yeah, but now connecting the whole code to parameter store, there are few steps that I don't remember exactly, because that is how the developer thing, we told them that this is the link, how can you, there are few changes that has to be made in their code to associate it with the parameter store. That is how
All
it
right.
works.
Okay. Let's go to the deployment phase. Uh, how do you deploy to dev QA environment and then deploy to production? What steps do you take?
Okay. So there's a slight difference when we deploy to dev QA or production. That is when we are deploying to dev. We, after the build stage, we directly jumped up to the deployment stage. But when it's a production, then we prefer to add one more stage. That is a manual approval stage, and that is already there in AWS. We don't have to put any extra effort. We just have to add one stage, and that stage gives you power that after build stage your application will not be deployed directly, as it's a production environment and you don't want to mess with it, sorry, even though you have tested things well in your dev and QA. So in the manual approval stage, you have few AWS services integrated there, like SNS. So there you can send an email to the owner that now your build stage has been completed and you'll be notified on your Slack channel or your email, whatever you want. Do you want to deploy it in your production environment? Like, are you sure for it? Then only you have to come and approve it. And since it's a production environment, you may not want to give access to everybody, so it's also a restricted thing. So this is a basic difference that we do in dev and production. Now I'm coming to deployment part.
Prerna, just take a step back.
Okay.
When the developers are working on the application, they are usually creating their own small branches or feature branches. What do you do with them? Like if developer wants to deploy their application into dev environment, and how do you manage that? Like, and then
Okay.
how do
So
you
sir,
push it to production? Which branch do you?
I got it. Okay. So I got it, sir. So usually when we initiate account itself, we always separate these things according to the account. We don't use the dev, QA, and production in same account. We have different dev account, different staging account, and different production account. So the work is already been segregated. Same goes for the source code. We use different branch. So while you are building a pipeline for dev, it is like it's been deployment has also been done in the dev environment itself. Your code is not going to production. Then that testing, the thorough testing is done there. Then same goes for pre-prod and then production. So when we are very sure, whatever the branches they are working on, as you told me, so if they are utilizing say QA branch for their work. So in that case, we'll configure our pipeline in that way only, that the deployment will go on QA itself, not in the production. When it is being tested thoroughly in QA and pre-dev, then only it is deployed in production. And that too, I told you with the manual approval part. So and it's been merged. When you are sorted with the QA thing, now you have worked on QA and everything is deployed through pipeline. We as a DevOps engineer also test few things, like if pipeline is taking the latest commit itself and it's been triggered, there is no manual intervention. Then only the same branch is merged to the master, and that is how we proceed in the production
So which
environment.
branch you use for deploying to production?
That is master branch.
Master branch. Okay. And once the master branch has been released to production, what do you do with that? Any action do you take?
So since I told you that that part like resides totally in the client environment, we have just been connected to their source code with the code pipelines
So
are
for example,
connected.
now let's take an example. You release something to production from master branch today. After
Okay.
10, 15 days, your team is still working on some of the source code in feature branches. Your manager or your customer wants to know what version of the application is deployed in the environment. What would you tell them?
Like in the current environment, sir, or the older one?
The current environment.
What version of application? Okay.
So
So
you
sir,
can't say that something that was 10 days before in master branch that was deployed.
okay.
What do you tell
Okay.
them like?
So whenever you trigger a pipeline or in the code pipeline, you have that commit history already maintained.
Mm-hmm.
So with that commit history, I'll be able to match like
But that commit history is a random text, right?
no
Like
sir, we
the
have that proper
hash
commit ID.
commit ID. So you can't say
Yeah.
to customer that a commit ID ABCD00ZC is deployed in production. How do you usually products are deployed like 1.0.1. Then if it's a minor change, then 102, 103 version. That's how we get like uh, any of the product from marketplace. You have a major
Okay.
version, minor version, like that. How do you do that sort of activity?
I'm not sure, sir. Maybe I'm not getting it clearly or whatever. I'm sorry. I have to look into it.
Okay, just look at major version, minor version, and some sort of tagging of the repository. So you would,
Okay. So got it, sir. May I?
yeah, please.
Okay. Okay. So whenever we push the images in ECR, we usually use two tags. One is the latest one, and one is the commit ID.
Right.
So latest one is just to maintain the thing so that we have to not manually always since it's EKS in the deployment file, we may not want to go again and again edit that file.
Mm-hmm.
So we maintain two tags. That is the latest one for the deployment ease, and second is the commit ID thing that you mentioned.
Right.
So with that commit ID, we have even the older images, and we also not commit ID. With commit ID, we add few things that you mentioned like V1, V2, and with every deployment, that keeps on changing. Version V1, the second one is V2, and those ECR images are already stored in our ECR itself. We do not delete them. Like we keep at least 30 older images. That is how we set some policy for ECR so that it also not get overwhelmed, and we do have certain things if we want to roll back.
Yeah. So you would
Thanks for the
basically,
hint, sir.
yeah, no worries. That's fine. So yeah, you maintain those versions, and when customer or anybody wants to know, you tell them that this is the version deployed, not the
Yeah,
commit ID.
correct, sir. That is what we have been doing.
Let's talk about the deployment to next level. Like you pushed something, it didn't work. What actions would you take, or have you had any experience that you deployed something to production and it's not working now?
So most of the time it did not happen, fortunately, since we have been very rigorously pushing things on first QA and then staging. We have been testing things on two environments. But yeah, fewer times you've also faced this, maybe some code change, something, it happens. So our first strategy is to make the environment live first, and then second thing we try to debug it. So we roll back. Always there's a rollback option.
Mhm.
So we roll back to the latest changes before it fails.
How do you roll
So
back?
that okay. So in code pipeline, so it's a bit easy. We have that one check that you can enable, and it will simply roll back if it is failing. You don't have to even do anything because in case where you will go inside something or check your application is not working, or you cannot wait customer to tell it's not working. There should be something very automated in that case. So our pipeline itself, if it's deploying a code and it fails, it immediately roll back. Yeah, you can set some alerts that you may want to know so that you can go and debug and fix the other thing, but
Okay.
it's already rolled back there. This is how we follow.
And any other experience you have rolling it into production, and then uh, what sort of issues you faced?
Yeah, so like uh, whenever rolling into production, sir, the rollback is always successful. We do not face any issue related to that. But later on in the debugging part, we have to finally look what were the issues that the deployed one was not working.
Mm-hmm.
So, sir, it depends on case to case. As a DevOps engineer, we never have a static issue to face.
Mm-hmm.
So, basically, we start with the basic things like we have the history thing maintained, and there we go and check why the pod was failing, what was the issue. Okay, and usually we try to recreate the same thing in the dev, and if it's something related to code, we take help with the developer, like
I
what
would
was
want to
seen.
know a specific incident where something failed. why I'm insisting on this, because this tells me that you have actually deployed to production. It's almost impossible to believe that in 2 years experience you deployed something to prod and it worked. So a specific
So,
incident
sir,
would give me confidence that you have actually deployed and it's not a theoretical knowledge that you are explaining. So that's why I'm insisting on at least one example where it didn't work.
okay, okay. I don't remember the precise thing, sir, but I remember there was something like that was from the developer side. I remember uh, some Eureka thing that he was using before, and after coming switching, like the things were before on Docker, but when they switched into, they were for service discovery. They were maybe using Eureka. That is what I remember. As I asked him at that time, like what did go wrong. So as we switch to EKS, the things were very easy. We don't need any third party thing for discovery of our pods. And so that service, the code related to that Eureka needed to be removed. And he also removed. I don't know what was the glitch. But
Mhm.
we were, as soon as we exit into that pod and we tried to check, so it was giving us some Eureka related errors.
Okay.
So then we sat with the developer because I was like not this thing was not known to me, and sat with him and he told me this thing is now been removed. I asked him what is like what was it used for, and then he just removed that part of code from his like repo, and it started to work. That is what I've seen. Multiple times I've seen so many issues, sir, but right now I'm not precisely able to recall them.
Okay.
But yeah, this is one of those that I remember right now with
Okay.
the exact thing.
Okay. Okay. I want to understand a little bit more around the Kubernetes permissions. So, for example, in my company, I want to give Prerna the right to delete some pods, do some maintenance activity, and have a lot of permissions. But at the same time, I have hired a junior engineer, and I just want them to monitor the cluster health. So they should have a read-only access. I can do that in AWS. How do I provide these AWS permissions in EKS cluster? How do I translate that into EKS level permissions?
Okay. So for that also we are utilizing IAM in AWS whenever permissions come, IAM comes into role. So depending upon the use case, what kind of permission you are trying to give, we'll insert those permissions to the IAM role that we'll make. And there is something that we use in EKS especially, that is RBAC for authentication.
Mhm.
So there there we have to add users, whatever users you want to give access to your EKS cluster.
Right.
And that IAM user will be used, and whatever the permissions you have provided to that IAM user, they will be able to utilize it. So
So, but will Kubernetes understand there is an IAM role? How does that translation happens?
it does, sir. Like I've done those
Some
things,
more
but
examples, some more details around it, how that happens.
right now I'm not able to recollect it that deeply.
Yeah, no
But yeah,
worries.
I've done it.
Okay. Now, if my EKS cluster that I have, there are certain pods there, they need access to other AWS services like DynamoDB, or how do we grant those permissions?
Okay. So when we create a EKS cluster, we have two different roles related to EKS itself. One is the node role, and second is the pod role. So if application residing inside my pod, like in our case, it was utilizing somewhere security hub and many more things to fetch. So we have to give that permission explicitly to that application only. So in the pod role, we attach those permissions, and same utilizing the IAM role. We created a IAM role, and in a pod role thing, we attach that pod with all those permissions.
Okay. Let me take to some of the other technical but more basic questions, not so much related to your day-to-day role. I want to understand what is TCP/IP.
Okay. TCP IP.
Yep.
Okay. So, sir, TCP as in protocol or IP? I'm not sure.
TCP protocol.
Okay. So, the TCP protocols we are utilizing in our day-to-day life. There's a huge variety of ports inside it. But like what it does actually, whenever I have to open some,
Okay, no worries.
say it,
Have you heard of UDP?
yeah, I've heard it, but I've not been utilizing it like for very in my day-to-day life.
No worries.
Mostly I remember. Huh.
No worries. Can you give like some difference between the application load balancer and the network load balancer?
Yes, sir, that I can get since we have all like been implementing these things very like on a very regular basis.
Yeah.
So me myself, I've never set up any NLV till now in my 2 years work experience. So with respect to NLB, I have just theoretical knowledge, but I know the basic differences. As when we suggest a client, we should have know ourselves first. So the basic difference between ALB and NLB is first one is the OSI layer on which they both work. So ALB basically works on the application layer. As much as I remember, it's layer 4 on a OSI layer and sorry, 7. I'm a bit confused on the layer part, sir, but that works on the application layer, and the other one works on the networking layer.
Okay.
Networking is the 7th layer. I remember now. 4th one is the application layer. Okay. So the other difference is okay. So by the protocols itself, sir, as you discussed, as much as I know, NLB does not support HTTP and HTTPS. It only supports TCP and all the types of protocols. And just because it does not support HTTP and HTTPS, whenever you choose NLB, it just picks your request and I think it uses behind the scene a ping kind of mechanism to know if your server is up or alive and it just throws your request. So behind the scene, if your application is working or not, it's healthy or not, it does not have any idea. So those type of functionalities are missing in NLB. While in ALB, as it works on HTTP and HTTPS protocol, that is where your application is hosted itself. So in that process, it also knows your application health and few things. So it's a better option. So because in NLB, even if your application is not working, your traffic will be redirected. It does not operate on that layer. And the other thing is as I already told you from my previous point, that NLB does not have anything related to your content, whatever is hosted inside. So in ALB, since it can read up to some extent, your content also, so it allows you some more things like content-based routing and many more things like path-based routing. A few like path-based routing is also in NLP, but content-based routing and many more things that are missing in NLP. So on that layer, ALB works fine.
Okay. Have you used ALB along with EKS?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me some idea how that is related to EKS and how do you use it?
Okay. So when it comes to EKS, we don't go like that way manually spinning up the ALB. We utilize as and EKS everything is declarative. So we use a YAML file. We create an ingress in that case. And since you are asking me, so it's a very basic thing. Whenever you create ingress as a resource, it creates ALB, not NLB in EKS. And so you create a YAML file and there you specify the name of your ALB. Its type is ingress, the port, and other basic things. For these, the writing YAML files are, to be very honest, we just go Google it, we know the terms and we edit it accordingly. So I don't have line to line description of that file, but that is how, that is how we start with. And
so what do you do like in that ALB that automatically gets created? What is configured in there? Do you have a DNS entry for ALB? Then how
yes.
the traffic comes from the end user to your pods?
Yes. So we have a DNS entry. Say my endpoint website name is http.example.com, whatever it is. So that entry must should be there inside my file. There's a specific parameter for the same. As I told you, I refer Google for that. I don't remember the exact name. But here we specify if the traffic is coming through this website, you can forward it on slash on the load balancer or whatever the path it is, like that. And port is already mentioned there. And now whenever your load balancer is created through that site, uh, if you can go and you can check those things, we have the path itself and you can see. But the same things is mentioned in your file itself. You can do that.
So if I have, say, in the EKS cluster, 10 different microservices, how many load balancers are needed for them?
So it depends on the use case. If those all 10 microservices are interrelated to each of them and they don't have a different purpose to serve, first we'll need to know how many of the services will be needing internal communication and who, which is the one needs to be externally exposed, because in EKS we get that handy part, the services will be able to communicate itself internally. So the load balancer part only comes into picture when you need to expose it. So I'll be only targeting the application, maybe my web app that is going to be exposed directly from the outside world. And for that only, I'll be spinning up a load balancer, not for every.
Okay, so I have a website and I have three different APIs also exposed to my end users. So there is an API, there are 2 or 3 APIs, and then there is a website. So in this
Okay.
case, how many load balancers should I have?
I've not been familiar with this architecture, right? Till now, I've only worked with those kind of applications, like where I have exposed only one endpoint. But as your scenario suggests, I'll allow me 10 seconds. I'll try to think myself and let you know what could be done here. Okay,
Okay.
so 3 API needs to be exposed. Okay. So the path for the 3 APIs must be different. There could not be a single DNS where they must be
Correct.
exposed.
They are different.
Okay. So okay. So I think then that can be handled inside the same load balancer. If there are only 3 APIs to be exposed, I think there must be some way. I have not implemented it as I told you, but I know, like we can add those things.
Okay. Apart from EKS and EKS related services, have you used other cloud related AWS services?
Yes, sir. Like cloud related on day to day basis, I've already told you, sir. Like VPC security group, IAM, KMS, and S3 bucket, ECS, ECS target to be very specific, and normal one also we have been using, and SNS, code pipeline, as I told you, is my
With
specialty.
your
That is.
experience, how do you suggest your customers to go with ECS or EKS? What's your recommendation to your customers?
Okay. So basically, sir, for that suggestion point of view, we have experience, like 7 to 8 years experience, senior solution architect. That is their job in our company. We don't give that suggestion. Yeah, but I try to talk to them and know what while taking these kind of decisions, how do they think? And fewer times we are lucky enough to get into the call itself to know, so that we are also like aware. So a few times our client only comes with their suggestion, like they are rigid, like I want to go to EKS no matter whatever it is. I want to go to Docker, whatever it is. So if that is the case, depending on their choice, we just suggest what could be the best. If they want to go to Docker itself, so depending about what about the what is the cost they are wanting to allocate. Okay, so if they are okay with allocating, they are having good budget, then we and they are moving to Dockerization thing. Then we'll suggest them ECS target, because it's AWS managed services, and we know that there will be like very low manual intervention. And if it's already been decided they have to go to Docker, they don't want to go to EKS, but budget is also low, then we suggest for like normal ECS service where few things you have to manage, few things AWS manages for you. It depends. Like most of the time we see the cost factors, because whenever the clients come, their main pain point is the cost. So accordingly, we decide, and few of our clients came like for them EKS looks very costly. So even if we insisted that it's a new age technology, you should, but they reluctantly said that no, we don't want to go. So depending on that.
Okay. One last question before we close, and this is around S3 bucket you mentioned. So
Okay.
you have some of your customers very secure data, something which is maybe your some sort of logs you have in your EKS cluster that has customer credit card information or something like that that you want to share with your actual customer for which you are hosting the EKS cluster, and how would you share that information with the customer?
That resides in my S3 bucket.
That's in your account, your S3 bucket.
Okay. Sir, S3 bucket right now, we want to take any data like this use case I have not been familiar with, like sending this kind of
What
data into
suggestions
S3.
you will have for them? What approach you are likely to take? There is one thing you can make it uh, public, static website.
No,
So that's unsecure.
that
So how would you make it secure?
okay. First of all, since it's a very delicate data hosted inside the S3 itself, first I will be securing my S3 bucket itself with different sets of things. Like when it comes to S3, AWS already has provided us so many things. I'll start with the IAM, the permission, the policies that you have attached with every unique S3 bucket. Okay, so I'll not be allowing. I'll be having very restricted permissions for that S3 bucket, so that not anyone can come and look into the bucket or download things inside that. First thing I'll do that. Second thing is on the encryption side, as this is the data. So I'll be using KMS keys to encrypt, and not the AWS managed KMS keys. As my data is delicate, I'll be taking extra precautions. I'll be making a custom AWS keys, and that too with a very restrictive permissions. So I'll be definitely, if I am working on that setup, I'll be knowing the owner, and I'll be only restricting things to that person only, not to the team. The second thing, I'll follow this, and third thing, okay, the first thing is this, second thing is this. What else I can do? I'm thinking.
But you have to eventually
Okay,
share the data with someone. So how would you go about that? This is a security part. This is a very good thing that you will be securing the critical data. How about sharing it with customers?
okay. Since I have not dealt with this use case,
No
allow
worries.
me few seconds. Sir. I'm
No
checking.
worries. I think you have handled the discussion quite well. Overall, if I look at the questions that you have answered very gracefully, the things that even some of the things you did not know, you have tried to think in that direction and at least give me some input that you are thinking about it. And if given maybe access to laptop or a chat GPT or Google, you can figure out things
Yes,
because you are
yes.
on the right track of answering the question. You may not go.
That is what we have been doing for past 2 years.
Right.
Okay,
So that gives me confidence that given the situation, you can manage the environment. Obviously,
okay,
at 2 years, some of the questions were slightly complex. Some of the questions we would expect slightly senior people to get into the production environment issues. But when you're going for the interviews, if you give real examples from your experience, they give the most confidence. Because
correct,
then you don't have to tell anything. You tell them that I have seen this, I have seen this fail, I have seen this succeed. That gives the maximum confidence. So
correct.
somewhere I felt there was a bit of theoretical knowledge. That's why I brought in actual examples that you should code. So because all the things you were some of the things that you were talking were like very theoretical. In any of your conversation, it wasn't coming out any real example from your experience. I'm not saying it in negative way or anything, but
No, no, sir. Totally feel
it's
that way.
um, like you would see what you would read in a blog or in a video or in a textbook. That's the language it was coming. In between, give an example from your experience. That makes it more context driven.
Sure.
Um, that yes, we secure the this thing, and I have seen these kind of errors we get when we don't do this stage. Um, the secret should be managed in a secret manager, and for our database and all, I put my secrets there and that sort of thing. So you usually leave it that it should be done that way, and this is how it should be done. uh, that makes it little theoretical in knowledge. You add that you follow this, you do this, then that would give more confidence that okay, you not only theoretically know, but you have implemented also.
Correct.
But otherwise it was
Thank you.
excellent. Like some of the interviews on my channel, you would see uh, people don't go to that level, and it was one of the good interviews that we had recently.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the feedback. Next time I'll surely work on these points.
Yeah. Anything you
And
want
sir,
to
if
ask?
you, yeah, sir, if you could tell me the answer to the last question, I'm really curious to know.
So
That's
there
the thing.
you can for securing the data and sending the data securely, you are going on the right track. You can ask customer their own key, and you can encrypt the data with that specific key and share with that person. So only that person will be able to decrypt the data. The other
Okay.
option could be you create a KMS key in your environment and also configure that person, the other AWS account that your customer has, provide access to the S3 bucket to that specific account, and also to KMS key that you have in your account specific to that person. So you can take these two approaches, that you can encrypt the data with a customer provided key, or if you want to use from your account, then uh, you know that, right? When you provide access to an encrypted bucket with AWS managed key, then key permission also has to be given to that person.
Yes,
So,
correct.
so that's why I mentioned you were going on the right track. Uh, Maybe slightly more depth, but yeah. But do research and do workout. Like think about these sort of scenarios. Talk to your friends or talk to your seniors, stay connected on this channel, understand what sort of scenarios could be there in the industry. uh, there are data transfer related things. There are on-prem to cloud data transfer scenarios, migrations, and all other things. There are a lot of scenarios around logs being passed and logs being analyzed. So do understand these sort of scenarios, even if you are not working in your day-to-day life. Get an idea that what products are useful in those areas, and how you can keep up with them. Like sometimes we don't work on the entire set of tech stack. So just keep yourself aware that yes, this is a very common use case. A lot of people might be trying this, sending data from account to another account, or other such scenarios. How do they do it? That's all.
Sure, sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Any more feedback, sir?
No, I think all good. It was quite good. Excellent.
Thank you for your time, sir. Thank you.
No worries.
Have
All
a
right.
nice day.
Best of luck, Prerna. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Take care.